Hi everyone, welcome to the Climate Confident podcast. My name is Tom Raftery and we have a special edition of the show today where we talk less about climate and more about waste and the transition to zero waste. So welcome on the show today, my special guest, Heather. Heather, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Tom, for having me here today. My name is Heather Johnson and I am the CEO of Ingenium. Ingenium is a hazardous waste transportation and management company. We focus on sustainability, finding more sustainable solutions for disposing of hazardous waste.
Okay, fantastic. And Heather, talk to me a little bit first about the genesis of Ingenium. What made you decide to start this company dealing with hazardous waste? Because it's not an obvious one, I would have thought.
It's not an obvious one. Absolutely not. I actually had an opportunity with several other folks in the industry to start Ingenium 17 years ago. We've all worked together in this space. I've been in this space for 27 years now. My partner's even longer, over 30 years. And we just decided that we thought we could do it better and we wanted to start our own company focusing on hazardous waste disposal.
Okay, and what has the journey been like?
It's been interesting. Hazardous waste it's a highly regulated industry and people don't really think about it. But I would say for Ingenium, back in 2008, we had been in business for about 2 years when the markets crashed and we just started to see a lot of waste of good products because companies were going out of business. And so typically you don't dispose of things that can still be used. But in that case, when they went out of business, all of their product became waste. And it really started our focus then on sustainability. Historically, we just looked at either burying or burning waste, and that's typically what you do. But when you see so much inventory now having to be disposed of, we thought there must be a better way. And honestly, back then, sustainability, I don't even think it was a buzzword yet. We're talking 15 years ago, and now you see it's on the forefront of everything.
And what made you decide? I mean, why didn't you just go along with everyone else and just landfill or get rid of the waste? What made you decide to go down the sustainability route?
Honestly, I think it was just painful to watch this amount of material being wasted. I mean, it makes good money for us. Obviously, we're in the business of disposal, but just seeing this, massive amount of chemical waste, what else can we do? Just starting to ask those questions and, think differently.
And what kind of waste are we talking about?
We're talking about, in that case, we work with a lot of biotech and pharmaceutical companies. So in their research and development, they use a lot of different reagents and compounds. So nasty, toxic chemicals, really, but nonetheless reusable. Or we could continue the use of these items by repurposing them between, one business that was going out of business and another, maybe a startup company that didn't have a lot of cash and they could benefit from taking advantage of these chemicals. Okay. But we also do this with manufacturing companies that have larger volumes of solvents or paints, things that somebody can benefit from continuing the use of before disposing them as hazardous waste.
Okay, so is it mostly chemicals we're talking about then?
Yes. When I think of hazardous, or when I speak of hazardous, it's mostly chemicals. Thank you for clarifying.
No worries. And talk to me a little bit then about the journey from 2008 to where we are today, 2023. What has that been like? What are you doing now that you weren't doing then?
Now we're constantly looking for better technology. So since 2008, there's been more focus on sustainability across, all industries, but with waste, and not even with waste, but with packaging of chemicals. So, how can we be more sustainable with our packaging, and how can we be more sustainable in all areas of business before we get to waste, before we have something that needs to be disposed of? So we've seen a lot of pressure upstream on suppliers, but when it does become a waste, just, what else can we do with it? What technology is out there? Can it be recycled? Can it be reused before it has to go into the ground or be burned?
Okay, and so talk to me then about the typical journey for a customer of yours. So let's say I'm a company that has a vat of chemicals that I want to get rid of. What happens and what do you do with that vat of chemicals, whatever they are?
So if you call me and you say, "Hey, I need help," I'm gonna come in and say, what do you have? What are you doing?" And you're gonna tell me what you're doing. Most likely, you have something in place, right? If you're a business that's been operating for a while, you understand regulation. Most businesses understand the regulatory requirements around chemicals if they're using them. And so if you were having a problem and you called me, I would want to understand what your problem is. What are you trying to do? And then from there, I would be able to help you understand what opportunities are available to you. So let's just say you've got a vat of chemicals and you have a sustainability goal and you don't want to burn them anymore. And you say, "Heather, please help me. I can't burn these. My boss is telling me that I have to do something better for the environment. What can I do?" So I would look at your chemicals and I would be able to determine what options are available to you. Now, some things, there are nothing you can do with them besides burn or bury, but a lot of things we can do better with. So just looking at what you have and saying, okay, here are your options. Now, one other thing to consider is it's not always cheaper to go the route of being greener, more sustainable. So you have to weigh that with your goals in terms of, okay, I'm going to spend more, but I'm going to accomplish what I'm trying to do here.
Okay, and what are typical things that can be done with chemicals if we're not burning them or destroying them or not burying them or whatever?
So if your chemicals are in good condition and you just no longer have a use for them, the first thing we try to do is find somebody else. In fact, we have a program that we call our orphan chemical program, and that is exactly what we're talking about. So, Tom, you're disposing of these chemicals, and I've got somebody else who can benefit from using these chemicals. I'll just transfer your inventory over to them. If you have things that are inherently waste-like and we cannot viably give it to somebody else for continued use and we have to dispose of it, then there, depending on what the chemicals are, we have options like waste to energy, which is a technology that, takes the waste and burns it, turns it into energy. In a lot of instances, you can power the grid with your waste, which is kind of cool. But there's regulatory requirements around those companies and facilities, and they can't waste to energy everything. There's a technology called fuels blending. This is where we can take things with heat value, solvents, and other chemicals, and they're used as a secondary fuel in a cement kiln. So instead of natural resources that you're burning, you can take waste, chemical waste, and use it as a secondary fuel or an alternative fuel. And then there are other technologies, distillation, which is where we can clean up a solvent, put it back on the market. We've got some opportunity to take things, combine them, and turn them into a product, like a gun wash, which is pretty interesting. So just depends on what the chemicals are and what the regulatory requirements allow to determine what we can do.
Okay, and amongst those different alternatives, what do I, as the person, as the owner of the chemicals, what do I get? I mean, you mentioned sustainability goals that my boss has. Do you, enable me to report on that in some way? Are you passing back data on that allows me then to report in my sustainability report or whatever it is?
That's a great question. And yes, we absolutely provide you with the data. You would start with a baseline, and then over time, we would be able to show you how much waste you've either reduced or put into more sustainable solutions. And your boss loves that data. Presenting that stuff to the shareholders, public companies especially, are interested in this stuff.
Okay. And is there a difference then between hazardous waste versus hazardous materials?
So from a regulatory standpoint, once it becomes a waste, meaning you decide you no longer have a use for it, then you're bound to time restrictions and limitations on how long you have to hold it before you have to get rid of it and document. It's called a manifest, where you're, documenting what you're disposing of, where it's going. There's time constraints on you to receive proof of disposal, all that kind of stuff. While it's a material, you do have regulations, I think, with the fire code and different agencies to know that you've got these materials in your building. But once they become waste, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I mentioned at the outset that a lot of companies are looking into the idea of going zero waste. And in the prep for this, you mentioned that this is something that you're helping companies achieve. So can you talk to me a bit about that, zero waste initiatives that you've come across, or ways that you're helping companies to go zero waste?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, there's something called zero landfill, and then there's zero waste. And so zero landfill means getting all of your waste out of a landfill, finding other things to do besides put it in a landfill. And zero waste is a little bit more stringent because landfill isn't an option. I'm sorry, waste to energy isn't an option, whereby just zero landfill, waste to energy would be an option. So what Ingenium is doing is, we call it a dumpster dive. We're literally getting into your dumpster, and we're starting with a baseline, providing data on what exactly is going into your trash now. So this would be separate from hazardous waste. This would be inclusive of every type of waste coming out of a company. So you've got trash cans at individuals' desks. You've got trash cans in lunch rooms around your facilities, and all of that stuff is being consolidated into your dumpster. What is it? In a lot of instances, there's commodities like cardboard, there's plastics, there's aluminums. And so we pick through there. We send people out and physically get into the dumpster and start collecting data. And then we present and say, here's what you have, the gamut of all the different items going into your trash. Now, what can you do with this stuff to ultimately rehome it into, more sustainable places, as opposed to that stuff all goes to the landfill, right? Your trash collection company comes, they take your dumpster, and they might pull out a few things that have value to them, but otherwise it's being buried. And so once we provide you the data of what you have, then we can provide you with options on what else you can do with it.
Okay, so you're putting those trash companies who come around collecting trash out of business, hopefully.
Hey, don't tell them that. They'll have to pivot just like the rest of us when business conditions change.
Okay, cool. And talk to me then about some of the technologies that you're using to do this, because obviously if you're burning some of the waste, that potentially can give off, pollutants in its own right. So we're trying to move away from that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So again, I think it just comes down to what it is and what options are available. And again, as I mentioned, the waste energy for that reason of the pollutants is not necessarily the best technology for the zero waste certification people seek. But it is better than just putting things into the landfill, because at some point we're out of space in this earth to bury things.
Yeah. And the zero waste regulations that you're referring to, is this California specific? Because we didn't mention it at the start, but you're based out of California. Is it California specific, or is it a federal legislation, or where does it come from?
It's a program that, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that it's a regulation, but it's a certification. So a little bit different from a regulation, but to get the certification, you have to do things a certain way.
Okay. And where are you operating? Is it just California, or is it across the lower 48, or is it all 50, or is it all of North America, or is it?
It's fair. We actually do that nationally because the certification, it's the same across the country. We've actually been asked to come international to several countries where some of our customers here in the States have operations globally. And we haven't done any of that yet. But nonetheless, I think everybody's paying attention to this. It's important for people to look at what they're doing and understand what they're doing and what else they can be doing. So they call on us to help them.
Okay, and with that certification, is that something that your customers approach you to try and get, or you approach your customers and say, you could go for this, or is it a mix, or how does that work?
At this time, it's mostly us reaching out and educating people on this as an opportunity. So our marketing efforts are trying to get to the masses and help them, again, back to people not knowing what they don't know, helping them understand what is available to them. And so we started promoting this I think it's been about 2 years already now. And it's getting a lot of traction, mostly with big public companies because they have initiatives and they have sustainability reports. And so it's really important to them. They've got plans on waste reduction. And I'll tell you, in the state of California, I think it's been, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago when the state imposed on businesses, they had to come up with plans to reduce their waste over time. And so businesses had to report to the state how much waste they were going to reduce over what period of time and by when they were going to have, waste reduction at X%. So, and that's continuing as a trend across the country.
Okay, cool. And where to next for Ingenium? I mean, you've come this far in the last, I think you said 17 years. So what are the next 5, 10, 15 years hold for you? Where do you see things going?
It's going to be a challenge, I think, with the waste industry. I will tell you that on a side note, with incineration, there are major capacity issues. There's a lot of captive incinerators in this country that have shut down. So there's limited capacity. And yet more and more things are being regulated and required to be managed as hazardous waste. So we've got greater volumes, less options. What are we going to do? So we've got a team of innovators that are looking forward, paying attention to new technology on the horizon, what's available, what's coming down the pipe, and wanting to be the thought leader in what we bring to the market in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay, and do you see any particular technologies or any particular trends coming along that people should be aware of?
I don't see any trends in the near future other than just looking for better ways to manage things. Mm-hmm. It's been a trend for us for a while, and it's now trendy. Yeah.
Okay, and the matching of waste so that waste from one company becomes a source of goods for another company, how is that progressing?
That's actually a wonderful program in the sense of it's a cost saving opportunity. You don't have, right now with the economics and people trying to save money, it's got a dual advantage. It's always had a dual advantage, but generally speaking, if we can present an inventory to somebody and they can take advantage of it, it's a win-win situation. I should say that it takes it out of the waste arena entirely. So there's this whole reporting requirement based on your generator status. The more waste you send, the more chemicals you dispose of, the more regulated you are in terms of how long you can hold things, documentation, reporting, all of these things. That goes away if they find somebody who can take their inventory in lieu of disposing it. So there's tons of advantage for both the donor and the recipient in that program.
Nice. And I mean, it seems as well that I'm assuming here that if I want to dispose of some chemicals, I'm going to have to pay a company like yourself, a waste company, to come take them and destroy those chemicals. Whereas if you're finding someone to take those chemicals off my hands, it sounds to me like the model is you take a finder's fee and they pay for the inventory. So instead of it becoming a cost, it becomes a potential maybe not profit center, but a way at least of my not having to pay for waste disposal and making some money as well.
Yeah. And it's less expensive at the end of the day. So the waste disposal is going to cost the donor more money, and the recipient is going to pay for new chemicals. So we just manage the transaction, and it's beneficial to everybody. So profit center for us, yes, absolutely. But we're providing value on both parties.
Of course, yeah. And value for the planet at the same time. So better again. Cool.
Yeah, so much benefit to repurposing chemicals in lieu of disposing of them.
Super. Heather, we're coming towards the end of the podcast now. Is there any question I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
I do, and it just occurred to me as you talked about having to have a professional company like Ingenium. It's really important, due to the regulated nature of the business, that you have a reputable company picking up your chemicals, whether they're disposing of them, repurposing them, or otherwise, finding better technology. There's so much regulation for you as the generator of the material to understand where the waste is going and ensure it's being properly managed, because there's this concept called cradle to grave, and you're ultimately responsible for your stuff to the end. So you may have seen news stories pop up occasionally where they've dug up drums of some waste that somebody improperly managed, and now the company that thought their waste was being handled appropriately has to pay a second time for disposal, and then typically a lot more cleanup. So it's really important to understand who you're working with and that they have the proper credentials to take your waste.
Okay, nice, great. Heather, that's been really interesting. If people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
I would direct them to our website at www.pureingenium, pureingenium.com/podcast.
Super.
They can find me there, as well as everything about the business and anything else they might be interested in for hazardous waste.
Fantastic. Heather, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Tom.